Hi everyone. I'm doing this video. I just wanted to tell you a story and maybe offer a view, a little compare and contrast. Recently, I happened to tune into the old 1951 science fiction classic, The Day the Earth Stood Still. That was, if for those of you that have not seen it or don't remember, that was the movie that featured Klaatu, the extraterrestrial, and Gort, the robot that came to Washington, D.C. in the spaceship and basically offered humankind the opportunity to join their galactic federation, but do so on peaceful terms. It is generally considered to be the most significant and favored science fiction film, basically, of all time. It was done in 1951. The movie starred Michael Rennie and Patricia Neal. It was directed by Robert Wise and produced by Julian Blaustein. There was a remake version in 2008 that starred Jennifer Connelly and Keanu Reeves. So they did do a remake on it. But what drew me to do this video was that uh, watched the last scene of the movie where Klaatu, Michael Rennie, was getting ready to board his ship to basically complete his mission. Now, his mission to Earth had been largely unsuccessful due to the reception that he received. He wanted to be able to meet with world authorities to offer the proposal to the U.S., or not the U.S., the world, humankind, our whole civilization, regarding our future and the possibilities of joining their galactic federation. But again, the overarching version was to do it on a peaceful basis. Throughout the movie, he was actually shot by a member of the army, and I'm sorry, he was shot and basically killed. But through their advanced technology, Gort was able to revive him so that he could then survive to make his speech upon leaving the spaceship. So I'm just going to read over the final scene uh, and help you recall the situation of what happened then. Basically, it was his warning to Earth to stop our wars, stop the nuclear proliferation, and basically stop trying to kill each other. And then I'm going to do a compare and contrast, fast forwarding to reflecting on our society today. Have we changed our views in the 71 years since 1951? Or are we just bound to repeat our own mistakes, so to speak? So let me read through the final scene that Michael Rennie gave in his speech to. Incidentally, the audience in that movie at that last scene consisted of members of the scientific community, the government, U.S. government in this case, and the U.S. military, which are the then were the only three entities or communities that were deemed important enough to include in the movie. Um Actually, also, Patricia Neal is a representative of the fourth community, which she's the example of you and I, the general public, and our emotions and our views or whatnot as part of the audience of this last scene. So I'm reading from the script here. This is Claire 2 talking to the assembled community of scientists, government, and U.S. military, and Patricia Neal, who was one of the protagonists in the movie and basically about the only sympathetic supporter of Klaatu's message. So Klaatu basically, as he's entering the ship, his speech, I am leaving soon, and you will forgive me if I speak bluntly. The universe grows smaller every day, and the threat of aggression by any group, anywhere, can no longer be tolerated. There must be security for all, or no one is secure. This does not mean giving up our any of our freedoms except the freedom to act irresponsibly. Basically, we are free to act as long as we don't act irresponsibly or by extension to hurt other people. Klaatu continues, your ancestors knew this when they made laws to govern themselves and hired policemen to enforce them. Hence the presence of the government and the military in the details of the movie and in the last scene. The scientists were brought aboard as the only group of, according to Klaatu's opinion, the only reasoning authority, so to speak, and the only group of intelligent individuals with which he could relay and communicate and discuss some of his ideas with, because the government and the military were basically totally uncooperative. So, Klaatu continues in his speech. We of the other planets have long accepted this principle. We have an organization for the mutual protection of all planets and for the complete elimination of aggression, a sort of United Nations on the planetary level. The test of any such higher authority, of course, is the police force that supports it. For our policemen, we created a race of robots, indicating Gort, if you want to call him the 1951 version of advanced artificial intelligence. Their function is to patrol the planets in spaceships like this one to preserve the peace. In matters of aggression, we have given them absolute power over us. At the first sign of violence, they act automatically against the aggressor, and the penalty for provoking their action is too terrible to risk. As you can see, if you remember and recall from the movie, to provide a display of his power, so to speak, Klaatu basically stopped all movement on the Earth at 12 o'clock noon for a period of, I believe it was 45 minutes or so, as a show of again support and explanation that they aren't kidding. That him and Gort have the power and the ability to produce the ends according to what is contained in his speech here. So let me continue. The result is that we live in peace without arms or armies, secure in the knowledge that we are free from aggression and war, free to pursue more profitable enterprises. We do not pretend to have achieved perfection, but we do have a system and it works. I came here to give you the facts. It is no concern of ours how you run your own planet. But if you threaten to extend your violence, this earth of yours will be reduced to a burned out cinder. Your choice is simple. Join us and live in peace, or pursue your present course and face obliteration. We will be waiting for your answer. The decision rests with you. And upon that last line, Klaatu turns around, they enter the spaceship, and they take off in leaving the rest of the developments up to the assembled collection of humankind and their communities for them to chart their own course in determining their futures and whether they can then be deemed worthy to accept invitation into the Galactic Federation and community that Klaatu was referring to. So very powerful and very poignant, profound script that was created and produced in 1951. So let me compare and contrast the 71 years since that particular movie was made. Um, Back then in 1951, they did have a doomsday clock, and what the doomsday clock is after the atom bomb capability was developed, and it's curious that that amongst the uh, the uh, the course of human activities and inventions and developments, when new technology is developed, it seems humans have the propensity for making a mass effort to produce a weapon or to weaponize that particular technology before trying to advance that technology for more peaceful existence and purposes, such as the atom bomb, which was developed as a bomb, and not so many years later was started to be developed as a source of cheap electric power to basically power our civilization and other uses of what nuclear power can represent, many of which have yet to be determined. But it's just curious as an example that uh, humans tend to use the track towards weaponization of an advanced technology as a first and often a single advancement and evolution of that technology. So the doomsday clock was developed as a result of the proliferation of the atom bomb, and the clock basically indicates how close our civilization is to starting a nuclear war. Now, back in 1951, it was generally agreed that the doomsday clock was to be set throughout that time period at about 2 minutes. Compare and contrast. Fast forward to this time at the end of 2022, excuse me, uh, in that the doomsday clock now resides at a point less than 100 seconds. So as the clock gets set closer to the 0 seconds, that shifts the needle towards propensity for starting a nuclear war, makes it more and more probable, more and more certain. So in the 71, 72 years since 1951, we've actually moved a little bit closer to that Armageddon of nuclear war than what was present back in 1951. Now, if you can remember back then from your history texts, and those of you that were alive back in 1951, that was a time where the world was still recovering from the World War, the last World War that was present, World War II. The world used all of its advanced war weaponry technologies in order to fight the war back then. Everybody was involved, and the victory for the Allies was still being felt. It was only a short 6 years after victory was obtained and the war kind of sort of resorted or settled back into a peace. And I'll say peace in parentheses because once World War II officially ended, the Cold War basically began because we had now the nuclear technology and the power with which to physically destroy our planet. And many ufologists and a growing public community is accepting that proliferation of atomic weaponry and atomic technology was what got ET's attention and created what is commonly known as the modern age of ufology. So, back in 1951, the Cold War was going on, even though there was the afterglow of the end of World War II, and in the United States and in many countries, there was suburbanization. There was building booms and prosperity that the whole world basically had not ever really seen before. The proliferation of the concept of suburbia, the suburbs, living in suburbs of major cities, the building and the economic explosions and whatnot going on. So even with all that afterglow, there was still the Cold War worldviews that were going on, and the tensions that you didn't know whether one would start a war by dropping atom bombs on the other one. So you fast forward to today, and there hasn't been a world war in almost 80 years. There are certainly, there hasn't been a time since then, and as continues today, there are national wars going on at various points throughout the world, but there's not that afterglow of a very recent end of a world war phenomenon type of thing is occurring in the year 2022, 2023. So that's a compare and contrast a little bit different. But other dimensions of compare and contrast, the proliferation these recent few years of the concept known as artificial intelligence. Well, going back to 1951, could Gort be considered an example of artificial intelligence? Certainly, there was an awful lot of power and influence that Gort had, even though he didn't speak a lot. Um, there was he was a very big protagonist or antagonist in both ways throughout the course of the movie. But compare and contrast, today it seems that some of our artificial intelligence activities could be compared to some of the capabilities that Gort actually had. The question remains in tying and circling back to the point that I just made about our government and humans' propensities for developing new technologies, but weaponizing them before creating peaceful alternatives and peaceful uses of these technologies. Is that the direction that, according to our propensities and our behaviors, is that the direction that our artificial intelligence technology is going to be drawn for or towards? In other words, will we be developing our AI for warlike purposes before we find peaceful uses for it? So that remains a question. On the dimension of the activities and the involvement in the ET and UFO UAP phenomenon, back in 1951, as you saw from the audience in the last scene of the movie, the day the Earth stood still, the audiences included the government, military, a group of scientists, and Jennifer Neal as a representative of the general public. It seems that in our culture today, compare and contrast, that those same entities have taken spots at the table and that no other representations appear to dominate or appear to take a prominent role in our society in terms of advancing the ET and UFO phenomenon to the point of first contact and developing relationships. So the fast forward, this is where my advocacy and a lot of my ufology work comes in to preparing our society in a multidisciplinary way, a United Nations of professions of sorts without the political overtones, to involve all of our cultural institutions, not just the military, not just the government, not just science, in the proliferation of meaningful and universal first contact with other intelligences and developing relationships with them. That's a big part of my work, advocacy, and that's partly and a big reason why I'm doing all of this stuff. So let's continue with the compare and contrast here. Incidentally, in our culture, back in 1951, the favorite sports in the United States was certainly baseball, but on the worldwide level, it was the world version of football, or otherwise known in some areas as soccer. Fast forward to today, uh, in the US, at least, anyways, the most popular sport is our version of American football. But in the world, worldview hasn't changed. It's the football world version, otherwise known as soccer. So the more we change in some ways, the more we seem to stay the same. So, in continuing on, as I briefly mentioned, the landscape of our war activities in 1951, again, we still had the afterglow of the end of World War II and the explosion of economic and worldwide development. Um, But there were wars going on back then too. The British Empire was relinquishing portions of Southeast Asia under their control, and the wars were continuing, proliferating in the Middle East after Israel was granted their government autonomy, so to speak, in 1947. The tensions in the Middle East continued. They were in existence even before 1947, but just continued on and were present in 1951. So fast forward, compare and contrast to today, the wars that are experienced are going on in the Ukraine, and also the very high tensions in the Middle East continue basically unabated in the 71-year time frame since then. Culture, another aspect of culture. Back in 1951, we may not have had the technology and the data and instrumentation with which to study, record data, and analyze this phenomenon. But back then, there was starting to be questions, at least in the natural sciences, about the phenomenon called climate change. Was there was our climate changing back in 1951? Well, we've got 71, two more years of data and again, advancement of technology instrumentation with which to be able to study the phenomenon. And there is now pretty much general conclusion that our climate is changing and not for the better, and that humans as a species are a significant factor in the cause of this climate change. As I circle back to compare and contrast, as I touched on the advances in technology, again, back in 1951, the atom bomb, the atomic technology was weaponized. That's all we knew back then. Fast forward, again, are we going to do the same thing? Are our behaviors and propensities going to propel us to do the same thing with artificial intelligence, that we develop and weaponize AI before we try and develop any technologies for peaceful proliferation and uses of artificial intelligence? So, as I come to a close here, hopefully I've given you some food for thought and invoked within you to have a little bit of time to yourself in your own thoughts to reflect upon this movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still. If you have seen it, hopefully I've spurred some thought to where you'll give it some consideration and kind of think, has our civilization, has our species really, our worldviews really changed in the last 71 years since the day the earth stood still was made? And for those of you that haven't seen the movie, it's my personal favorite, and it's generally considered as one of the all-time science fiction favorites. And again, as back then and as today, we don't have, or do we have, spaceships that Klaatu was able to, after his speech, climb into and take off and leave planet Earth? Do we have Gorts as part of our technology archive, or our technology arsenal or inventory, so to speak? So, in concluding, my questions to you in comparing and contrasting from the day the earth stood still to today: has our human condition, has our human natures, has the civilization that we've presented for ourselves with which to live in, have we really changed in 71, 72 years since the 1951 broadcast of The Day the Earth Stood Still? Thanks for listening, and hopefully you can give it some thought. You can feel free to start the blog and make comments to me on my Humaniverse page on the Facebook platform. That's the Facebook, the Humaniverse page, and I look forward to your comments and insights, and hopefully knowledge that we can grow together. Thanks for all your help, and we'll see you next time. Bye now.